Thanks for joining me. I'm going to try to attempt to answer a question that seems to have been coming up on the YouTube searches lately, which is, what does a building surveyor actually do? Which is quite funny to me, seeing that I am one, because I normally assume that everybody knows what a building surveyor does, but apparently not. So as part of answering this question, I think it's first important to ask another question, which is, why have a building survey? I would answer it like this. When you're going to view a property and the person selling the property has made it look absolutely spotless and beautiful, so you fall in love with the property, you make an offer in good faith subject to survey, because if you're not a surveyor, you haven't got the technical expertise necessarily to know or notice defects that might not be readily apparent. That's where the surveyor comes in. So the surveyor will do an inspection of the property on a thorough, structurally focused basis, but also reporting on the general condition of the property and the services normally. This usually is on what's termed as a visual, non-intrusive, non-destructive basis, which means that the survey is as thorough as it can be without literally pulling the place apart and causing damage in order to see deeper into a stud wall, for example. That is the basis of most pre-purchase full building surveys. So to clarify and to recap a bit, one of the most common purposes of a building surveyor, which we've just spoke about, is the pre-purchase survey. And the purpose is to equip the customer with enough knowledge based on technical expertise and rationale to be able to enter into their transaction to buy the property in a rational way. In other words, to be able to ascertain from the information whether the offer they've made reflects the actual condition of the property and its various issues or not, in which case then they can decide whether they're going to buy it at that price, or if they're going to go back through their solicitor to negotiate on the basis that they made their offer not knowing there were certain things wrong with the property that were quite substantial. So that sort of summarises that. We of course tell them it's good if it's good. We don't just tell them the bad stuff. So that's the pre-purchase survey, but that's only one of the roles of a building surveyor. And the question was, what does a building surveyor do? So there's other areas within the building industry that a building surveyor does. One of those is called being a party wall surveyor, which is carrying out surveying duties laid out within the realms of the Party Wall Etc. Act 1996. And this is a piece of legislation the government brought in to basically avoid neighbourly disputes over someone building close to or on a party wall. So that's another role of the building surveyor, and it's quite specialised but very common, because if you've got an extension that's being built, say within 3 metres of a neighbouring property, where you're going to potentially excavate the foundations lower than the neighbour's foundations, the act applies. So it comes up a lot, and it's important to people that are thinking about a job in building surveying to know about these various roles, so they can look into it and weigh up if it's something they want to do or not. So another area a building surveyor tends to get involved in is expert witness reports for building related disputes, where something's gone wrong with a building, someone's blaming someone, and quite often you'll get asked to produce an expert report on how you feel the matter arose, what the implications are, whether it was in breach of regulations or not. This tends to be led by the solicitor in terms of the questions that are specifically asked for you to answer, but sometimes you'll be given more of a general brief to comment upon a matter, and it's a bit like being a backroom solicitor. So it's quite interesting sometimes, but the emphasis is always on being professional and impartial and giving an honest, rationalised opinion. So that may appeal to people that want to come into the industry that are sort of legally minded, as it were. So it is quite varied, a building surveyor's role and jobs, but the most common by far is carrying out surveys for people buying houses or flats or even commercial buildings before they buy, so they know what they're getting into before they buy the property. So other aspects, we carry out things sometimes called schedules of dilapidations on leases. So if there's a commercial lease for a office or a warehouse, for example, there'll be terms within a lease that lay out the various responsibilities of the landlord and tenant, called covenants of repair. And a schedule of dilapidations is essentially a schedule of lease breaches, not exclusively concerned with the covenants of repair, but the lease in general. And it's a building surveyor's role to actually read the lease, work out what the covenants of repair were, where the breaches are, and schedule those, and if asked, negotiate settlement of that dilapidations claim, because it effectively forms a claim within the wording of the lease. So that's a landlord and tenant aspect of a building surveyor's duties. Other things that can come up are specific surveys for, say, housing associations or landlords with large portfolios that wish to know the condition of their stock, called a stock condition survey, or planned repair schedules, where you're drawing up schedules of works for a builder to price to put properties right in a portfolio. So it's a very, very varied. The short answer is building surveyors are best known for doing inspections for people buying properties before they buy the property. However, it's a very, very varied occupation, and there's all sorts of things you could get involved in should you choose to, even down to boundary disputes, measured surveys for boundary disputes, arbitration. There's all kinds of roles within building surveying, so it's not something you could answer in one video just to a simple YouTube question. However, I think hopefully I've given you an overview of the main things that building surveyors are known for. You might be wondering, what does a building surveyor actually do when he goes and does a pre-purchase survey? Well, it usually involves starting on the outside first and going logically down the building, looking for signs of defect, inadequacy of members, poor fixings, leaks, dampness, potential breaches of damp-proof course, looking at gutters, drainage by lifting the manholes if they can be easily lifted, outbuildings, grounds. And then we go inside the property, starting at the loft, working down, looking for signs of distortion and movement at all times, cataloguing any cracks and rationalising whether they're anything to worry about or not and why, and also explaining with all of the defects we find what to do about those and roughly how much it will cost to get them sorted out. So this usually is done by way of a digital dictaphone. So you're on site, you're noting down all of the defects as you see them so you don't miss anything, and it's all recorded. You also take digital photographs, which is like a second tranche of checks you go through before you publish your report. So what typically happens is you dictate what you see on site, it goes to the typist, gets typed in a different colour to the main boilerplate type stuff that's in a template report that you might have, so you know what is actual and particular to the property against what is standard phraseology you might have to edit to suit the particular property. You then basically do a first draft, make sure the thing reads right. You then look at your photographs, and that's like a double check as well, and just generally sit with it, usually a day or so, to make sure you feel you've covered all the main points and that you are happy with the advice you're giving in what we call an executive summary, which is almost like worded like a letter to the client, explaining in easier terms what our findings were and the implications, with all the detail in the rest of the report, so they can read through the rationale and the detail, how we got to those conclusions in the rest of the report in the individual sections. So for those that have never seen a survey report, I suppose that gives you some kind of an idea of how practically a surveyor gets from going there completely blank, dictating findings and getting it to a report to give to the customer at the end of the day. And hopefully it's given people that are thinking of having a job in surveying some sort of overview as well, or at least some buzzwords they can Google and find out more if they wish to. So thank you very much for watching. I hope this has done the job from the point of view of the question that was asked, and tune in for some more videos. We're going to do a few more videos, and check out our website and all that jazz. See you in the next one.